All right. We're live. Hello,
Hey.
and welcome to this joint launch of Joshua Escobar's and Anaïs Duplan's new books of poetry. My name is Greg Newton. I am the co-founder with my partner Donnie Jokum of the Bureau of General Services Queer Division in New York City. And we founded that in 2012. We've been at the LGBT Community Center since 2014. And we have been closed since March 13th due to the pandemic. And it looks like we're going to be closed at least for the remainder of this year. And who knows what 2021 shall bring. Keep chanting, praying, doing whatever it is you do to make this world kinder, gentler, and more loving. So yeah, we're kind of on hold with that, but we're going to keep doing online events such as this. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for everyone who's donated. That helps us with our Zoom subscription and all the techie things we need to operate in this world. We've also launched an online store that's on our website. So our website is bgsqd.com. And you just do /store and you'll get to the store, or you can click on the menu. So we're adding tons of books. Sadly, we don't have the books for tonight's event. I really wanted that to happen, but small poetry presses can be a little more challenging for us because we, right now we have to deal with Ingram, the big major distributor in this country. Mm-hmm. But you can get both books through SPD, Small Press Distribution. So if you go to spd.com, you can find both titles there. But do please check out our online store. We have a lot of great stuff there that I'm very excited about. And we keep adding stuff all the time, so it'll keep growing. I'm going to turn the stage over to Joshua and to Anne. And they're both going to do some reading from their new books, as well as join us in conversation. And we're a small enough group that we can just chat amongst ourselves about whatever people want to talk about. But I'm very excited to hear both their works. I was reminded by Anne that they read at the Lou Sullivan Diaries launch that we had at the Bureau. Yes, which you can buy on our online store. That you can buy on our online store. That was great. We had a full house for that. Josh has read at the Bureau before. I don't remember how long ago it was when you launched a chapbook of poetry, but we're happy to have you back, even if it is virtually. So please give it up for Josh and for Anne.
Yeah, thanks so much, Greg, for having us. And yeah, it's just a trip to be living in this world where nothing is as it was. And supply chains are affected, our livelihoods are affected, our families are affected. So, and like the revolution's happening. So I tried to have class this morning and none of my students showed up. So, that says something about our times. But this book, it came out over this summer, and it's called Bareback Nightfall, and it's published by Noemi Press. And it's about a DJ who lives in a dystopia in which there is no difference between nightlife and the day-to-day. And there's 4 sections in the book, each representing a different character, and you can see them on the cover. There's a little piñata, the Eyes of Arcana, DJ, Dr. Electronic, and DJ Ashtray. They're based off of masks, and the masks are behind me. And they're masks my brother made. So it's like a work of like performance experimental poetry. And I just want to read from it. So thanks everyone for coming and who's going to watch this in the future. And really excited I could read with Anne tonight. Traffic by the Tamarins highlights naked ambitions. Hustler 112 takes me to the gas station where he hooks up friends of friends. In their burners, cops know they'd only make things worse. Why am I so shy? We are mildly worthless. Later, Imp 313 wants me under his beautiful idea. Another sympathizes, yet is unable to get me up, yet is vinegar on my legs. Others and then some, we drag each other into bed. A car alarm goes off miles away as a broom-headed beast is on me. All their love may contain traces of mercury. Eels get off my grill. Hustler 213 and I blast our sets. No one says a thing. Tías sean pendejos. I stay 213's bottom even though I'm not into it. 213 won't let me go out on weekends, even when we're out of cereal and sopa Ramon. 213 knows my messes. Armor, give me todo. Loud, amor, give me nada. All right, and that was the first one. I'm gonna jump around a bit. And this one is to a best friend. Dear drug dealer, you take me aside to show me how to gamble con la rana y la escalera. Copper bolts on the sides of your head and shoulders hardly deflate. Get between me and my shadow, flash your teeth. Singing in water is a waste of time. Like a banjo, you always look ready to play, despite your runaway mornings and the hideous thoughts that come out of you like parrots. Across the dirt field, moonlight falls, but so do ill boots and the musculature of Greco-Romans. She drops you off without your money or keys for a good reason. I get your transmission. El Diablito, with his tight shorts and pointy tail, wants it both ways. You are killed in a shootout days before we hook up, and you don't even know. My tears and spit slip like the seeds of a cantaloupe. Dr. Electronic lies maroon from others. His head lifts up from the arrowroot. Limestone comes off our legs, softly frenetic. Where is my mop? I don't have it. Blanks jilt this yarrow. Vista he faces motionless on the azure hillside. I bury my head into his stomach and then suck his clip. He scooches until his knees are at my ears. Sharp specks and strands of hair are on my hands. Gasp his sunny decay. An oily finger fumbles up. He is so tight. My legs are overwhelmed with weeds. Drool on me a little. Bile of half thoughts accumulate in my throat. Yeah, destroy my hole. It spills wider with every second as he smears himself across my mouth. I kiss him. Come on me for the second, third, fourth deodorant. His mess, he clamps and says, come on, I deserve this. His shoulder jolting along with the rest, he is going to make me cry again. Shh. Hair, the sky spices. All right. So that was the poems from the first section. And just to show off the first section a little bit. So each of the 4 sections of the book has its own typeface. And my twin brother helped me find them. So this is the DJ's typeface, which is on marquee, and it was made by a queer typographer. And then the next section, it's much more, it's like standard, but still queer. And it's the Ides of Arcana section. So for making this book, one of the reasons why I'm so excited to read it on tonight is like, I'm very interested in like the image, and the image like coming from visual art, not just like poetry. So I'm excited. This is all happening. Atomic Girls Sachude La Pereza. In a parking lot, feeling the casual stop of muscle, vehicles dead asleep alongside stucco rises, sore haircut mess. Never grew up thinking I'd be a cocksucker, Sun-dying valley, head and shoulders awake. You know, treasure fiends waiting with more sacks than Santa for a cheap ride out of Pomona. Stray flyers are piercing the pepper trees on the 10, while I seduce, revolve my beat up tires. Left turn, a refinery, demos anti-gravity. And that we're super broke. Another parking lot, stray boxer wants only papas fritas. Yellow light, a billow bites into the junction of avocado messengers, scuba perros, peach tree mujeres. The Ides of Arcana lets me ride in her truck bed alongside weed whackers and jugs of herbicide. We talk voltage showers and froth, lips and Mexico juice. I used to mix brackish water with old tequila, polka dot strawberries, and prep, aged in her garage, popular with our broke-ass friends. Dirt channels inside as her truck steals onto the trails de lavender chaos. My neighborhood appears across Caliente Valley. By November, it will be abandoned, the air cold enough to bust windows, and for desperate coyotes to dip into the houses of pigeons. Others get used to this mess. Copper strays eyeing your back, CDs and old magazines in the riverbeds, the citrus fest. The devil stands in yellow drapes with a high collar, holding a sack of wild Savoya. That rug under him will outlive us. The valley draws so many mysterious gente. Juicy tongues, juicy ears, end up confetti. Your friends die or become dead to you. Night curls up in the dirt, in the valley of sun. Valley of sun where I felt love and it was citrus. Where I felt love and it was burnt cilantro. Valley of sun where I felt love and it was heat and retro. Valley of sun where I felt love and it was anoche. Valley of sun where I felt love and it was bananas in El Garaje. It was no anchor. Where I felt love and it was later. Where I felt love and I was pretty oblivious. Valley of sun where I felt love and it was chingona and disco guaywa hesa. Where I felt love and it was chile slashed and burned. Where I felt love and it was Chihuahua beauty supplies. Valley of sun where I felt and it was. All right. So this poem is a poem I was reading to like my students yesterday. And I was like, this is a poem of when I was in college, which was many moons ago. And I can never read it with as much energy as it demands. So you'll just have to bear with me. It's called Zol on Me in the Backseat. Later, I end up with the dolls of D minor. Their delicate fighting keeps Papa Fritas operational. We gnaw the sun off bodegas, bust washer machines, lick each other's pink and white duct tape. When I talk too much, they ask about badminton. Before I open my mouth, they holler my instruction. Mirrors leads to cats, lead to temples, lead to fumes, lead to Ryans, lead to views. We unload avalanches in a sun-beat colectivo. Corrugated clear plastic shields us from the Malecon. Engines plus atmosphere, plus ocean in my atmosphere. Subconscious, they shout, body help, as the devil follows in his janky ice cream truck, unsure to what extent we exist. They jeer, get over, come over, turn over, repeat. On my birthday, we go to Ari's construction site. They order hammer sandia smoothies. They blindfold pass me through sweaty rows, holding flashlights. They shout, you're gorgeous enough to film. We wake with aquamarine on our legs. They shout, cocinas make the devils dance. In darker months, The dolls of D minor block the exits of cinemas and airplanes for hire. Under Cantina's suns, we know suavecitas for their destabilizing holds, living under the path of airplanes, styrofoam space, downright. They shout, I haven't had enough. Thrashing a pickup, we find love easily. And then this poem is like probably the only poem in this book about this world where there's no difference between the nightlife and the day-to-day, which is about, this poem is just about, the only poem about our present. And it's called Everybody in General. Let's kiss Frank as in Frankenstein. Let's kiss people in cages. Let's kiss nebulae double-crossed. Let's kiss straight people mauling whatever they love. Let's kiss the sexuality of other cities. Let's kiss unused doctrines and volumes of knowledge. Let's kiss lovers playing up the doom. Let's kiss feathers versus chasm. Let's kiss chasm versus feathers. Let's kiss Saint Francisco of the Latin X's. Let's kiss agony to death. Let's kiss Ra's bombness. Let's kiss a baby queer's hoe streak. Let's kiss another sexy guy's disinterest. Let's kiss the fruity aftertaste of Lucifer's skull and bones soup. Let's kiss youth drilled anew. Even as it's impossible to see each other, let's kiss. All right, how am I doing on time? Like, maybe like a few more minutes? All right, I got you. The joke is like, who's counting anyways? All right, notes. So Dr. Electronic is one of the characters and he's in love with the DJ in the book. And it's like torn, kind of fucked up relationship on Dr. Electronic's part, but also DJ Ashby's part. And Dr. Electronic was working on a medical expose in which he never finished. And so I'm going to read from that medical expose, which he never finished. Notes. The erotics of depravity. I believe in inner outer orgasms. Treatments extend lovers on pogo sticks devastating the night. July 9th, men, the straight surgeon, can contend knifeless, no homo. September 30th, today's headline, will we soon all be masculine subs? Mañanas, are Americans gangbangers? October 8th, a few cute guys in the psychedelic ward died from fizzy water deluxe. They might have seriously been harmed by bath toys. Although their looks jilt our ships, accordions or drums can't receive flowers in the hospital. November 24th. The abuses of sour limes are, however, pervasive. Much remains unsaid about the day-to-day hardship, money, and sociology behind sledding without confetti and its proliferation in California. December 7th. We have all been the poster children of a social ill, a campaign so successful, 62 countries have legalized torture. How do I love without breaking the law? December 15th. I am supposed to talk with one of my patients, but her jaw may rot at any moment. Hashtag yikes. December 19th. Figuring out how to love has taken 22 years. The actual encounter 2 hours, the sex act 5 minutes, i.e. my smoke break. December 28th, the profit margin on your body is so small, it is negligible / abstract. January 3rd, DJ Ashtray, you're still spinning in my head. February 19th, suffering while horny is hashtag stigmatized. I keep forgetting how serious my pink is. February 25th. Gayness is busted like little grid pinatas. March 30th. What does it mean to fuck or be fucked anymore? Lantana X's in Nebraska, slow each motion. I'm hungry or something, lifting their shower curtain for what's left. All right. And another sad poem. DJ, I was just like you. Circulation of the marvel, of the fragile sane. I'm tempted to cry when they shine, while counting the number of illnesses alleviated with a TAM. I've been trained to be unsympathetic to the messes you make for yourself. I give out medicine for free on Sierra. My moans, no zero. Ill honey bed. Jealous, I can sleep. Jealous, you can spit. Burning sage to have. My way. I didn't stop for them and their Herculean love of ass. But if I wouldn't have made it, gay bars never play the music of my late brother, but repeats and zippy conversation in a society discovered to death. XO pain, yellow breaths, avocado oil covers my naked doubts. Gorgeous fools beside the verisimilitude of setting. All right. And then this poem's about utopia. And there is warm manufacturing in South California, hills in no hills, plus acrylic idleness. Once I understood death. Now unpackaging angel hair, inheriting loop circular. Now crashing milk and stewed tomatoes. Now the TV singing, take it, light up anus 3000s. Now sip broth. Now I'm a boy playing tag at the Mary Lytle Nature Center under the milkweed manzanita something patch. Flecks of sun reach the bare, messy earth. Other kids call, laugh, hide from the one who is it, or who they think is. Now I sleep in the mailbox of Saint Anonymous and Wasting. Honey, mercurial calavera, moss in winter, he fought in 2 guerras. He eats rocks, rust, is blamed for headless snakes, needed for earthquakes, honey, mercurial calaveras. Now I miss the way we obsessed over one another. Sun and moon. We do all the icy you stole from work, and I'd make enchiladas. We'd lie to Grimes or Cesara Evora, have sex, eat gossip, and then scrub each other with tea tree oils. I wish now you were drooling over me, like after queer cumbia, in a sleeveless yellow tee plus long black jeans. I wish we could wake to the sky hickeyed, oak trees naked, thrashing, stirring. I long for old school block parties, all the barbecues, dance halls lit by ill beats plus rupture. I wish people would embrace others outside of slaughter. I want a future where every chingona gets a free bicicleta painted purple. All right. I think that's a good place to stop. And so, yeah, my book's available in NeueHouse, and I'll put links to stuff if they haven't been put into the chat. So, the floor is yours.
Thank you for that. There's all sorts of questions I want to ask you now. I was talking with my friend last night about how there are some things I miss about pre-pandemic life and there are some things I don't. And one of the things I super miss is being in like a club or like a bar very, very close to other people, and the way that like touch rules change. So people just touch each other differently in that space. And now touch is so like charged with meaning and danger and like a special thing that you do with people inside of your pod. So I guess I will read an essay. So Blackspace is a book that comes out of my research as a music journalist and an arts administrator into the practices of experimental artists of color, a lot of Black video artists, electronic musicians, but also poets, and thinking about how they frame their relationship to the idea of liberation, and primarily thinking about liberation through these three lenses, one being like individual psychic liberation, like my freedom qua on, and then social liberation, the freedom of my social group, Black people, trans people, and then this sort of more difficult to define or describe existential or universal liberation. And I think, like a lot of people, I had primarily negative associations with the word universal because it had been used in a sort of social way to exclude my own experience. But it was a nice experience of reclaiming the universal for myself, and seeing it in the practices of other people. So the book sort of weaves in and out of talking about other people and then talking about me. And I think it's the first place where my writing and poetic practice, which felt very like solitary and about me, came together with my journalistic and arts administrative practice. And so it's this kind of moving in between looking inward and then looking outward. And this particular essay, well, I'll say that and then just read this essay. Okay. Making use of the mundane, Black performance and becoming. After practice one day, the other girls on my high school varsity tennis team walked off the courts and sat in a circle on the grass to stretch their legs and pack up their stuff. Josephine, the team captain, announced to everyone how badly she needed to shave her legs. Laughing, the other girls chimed in about the unkempt states of their own leg hair situations. Standing, as it was in my nature to do, awkwardly off to the side, I realized I'd never thought to shave any part of my body, not even once. That night, I ducked into the supermarket on my walk home and bought myself a razor and some shaving cream. The next day, in physics class, I asked a tall, shaggy-haired lacrosse player named Tyler if I could borrow his jacket, taking my voice up a half octave and pretending I was cold by wrapping my arms across my chest. He gave me the jacket. I tried my best to hide my surprise. Tyler had never been particularly nice to me before, or even really noticed me, but there he was, smiling a sweet, boyish smile in my direction. Somewhere in my mind, I made a note. If you want boys to pay attention to you, shave your legs and act like you need help. To my lesbian mother's delight, I came out during my senior year of high school, but my relationship with my girlfriend at the time didn't last very long. Though I couldn't have articulated this to myself then, I couldn't make love to Maggie the way I wanted to. I was missing the body parts I thought I needed, and my feelings of dysphoria plagued our relationship. After we broke up, I came out to my mother. I dated men almost exclusively, despite the fact that I wanted to be the men I dated more than I wanted to date them. Since beginning hormone therapy, sex with men doesn't plague me, but for a long time I hid my dysphoria from myself by convincing myself that if I could get the right man to love me, my feelings of emptiness and incompleteness would go away. Not only did that stop working, it's hard to say whether it ever really worked in the first place, but it also turns out that most male attention felt more or less predatory to me while I continued to ignore the excessive amounts of toxic shame I was walking around with. Like being a child forever, being a woman in our society tends to mean having weakness and vulnerability projected onto you. Before I was sure I was trans, I hesitated to transition because I didn't want to feel like I was giving up my body just because I resent the way women are read and treated in this society. But being trans is different from suffering from toxic internalized shame, though those two things can overlap, especially if you've gone through various forms of trauma in early development like I have. Feeling more comfortable in my body as it changes on testosterone is different from cultivating a sense of myself as innately valuable as a human being, but those two things can and have overlapped. Growing up, I rationalized my father's absence with ideas about gender norms. I thought that men, since they are more powerful, didn't have to have obligations to other people. I thought that I, too, wanted to not have other obligations to other people. I internalized a concept of feminine love as that which either perfectly complements or perfectly emulates the love object. Both versions are traps. In certain ways, having power projected onto you is as asphyxiating as having powerlessness projected onto you. The primary difference is that having powerlessness projected onto you puts you into danger that having power projected onto you doesn't. Having obligations to other people is part of the beauty of being human, but our connections have to be chosen, not imposed. For a long time, I thought the only way to freely choose anything was as a man. The truth is, freedom is the most mundane thing imaginable, but it's also hard to locate and rarely pure. All marginalized people inhabit two worlds at the same time, those of freedom and non-freedom. Being unfree is different than being in bondage. In bondage, as in the case of enslavement, one's body is owned by someone else. Being unfree, on the other hand, is what happens after the end of enslavement. One becomes an emancipated citizen in the society that used to enslave her and that is still built to do so, without a literal title on one's body, but still with the power to destroy that body, threaten it, circumscribe it, categorize it, and imprison it. Should we, post-bondage, focus on the ways in which we're free to move, free to buy, free to breathe, or the ways we're not free to move but displaced and shuffled around, free to buy but within a capitalist system in which one used to exist as a commodity, free to breathe but in a special danger at all times? Neither. In order to locate liberation, one has to locate a third space. This alter space is not outside of, away from, or other than our present world. Instead, it is an intensification or deepening of mundane reality. The performance of what we might call black male nihilism lives in the space of the hypermundane. In a skit that aired during a 2013 episode of The Eric Andre Show, Andre is dressed as an NYPD cop, handcuffed to a lamppost with his pants down around his ankles. He begs people from the crowd forming around him to help him pull up his pants. Mocking his own masculinity, his authority, Andre makes himself vulnerable to passers-by, who look on with a mix of piteous humor and disturbed concern. A black man posing as a failed cop, handcuffed to a phallic object, assumes the identity of the oppressor and makes a mockery of that same oppressor. The crowd of black witnesses to Andre's prank don't exactly enjoy a moment of catharsis at seeing the disempowered and emasculated policeman, because they're busy trying to figure out whether to fear Andre. At one point, one man warns the others not to touch him, or to help him. Viewers do enjoy the opportunity, however, to intervene in their daily lives with a kind of agency or power they don't otherwise experience. The temporary release from the mundane represented by the opportunity to assist a cop in a humorously embarrassing predicament is also a heightening of the mundane. Andre's vulnerability introduces softness, humanity, and tenderness as embodied by his nudity, where before, in the masculine authoritative ideal, there was little. We could describe this performance by Andre as a deliberate misperformance of an archetype of heteronormative masculinity that then frees us from that ideal by exposing it as farcical. Though it's hard to identify rappers these days who seem as straightforwardly masculine as 50 Cent seemed to me when I was growing up, which may be due to the fact that I questioned masculinity as a concept much less when I was a preteen and teenager in the late 90s and early 2000s, and I might say the same of the culture at the time. There are plenty of contemporary examples of Black male celebrities playing the part. Representing this Black masculine ideal involves demonstrating physical strength, wealth, sexual prowess, and relationships with women who rely on him for material goods and sex, engaging successfully in conflicts with others, and rising above competition, whether that call for physical violence and or intellectual excellence. All that being said, figures like Drake and Future, while fulfilling a masculine archetype in certain ways, seem, to my slightly more grown-up senses, to also harbor elements of traditional femininity in their music and self-presentation. I think of Future's long, beautiful locks. Notwithstanding how straightforward or otherwise their performances of masculinity are, before I go any further, I must admit that the way that Black male-identified figures in this essay have begun to bleed into and overlap with one another, threatening to become, in a sense, interchangeable with one another, or in the very least, instrumental, is part of the horror that has also kept me from writing this essay for so long. Speaking about these men abstractly feels problematic, seeing as it requires me to idealize them. And though I believe myself to have good motives and good information, I am nonetheless making use of human beings to whom I have no real relationship to make a point, recreating the conditions for this society's continued dehumanization of the so-called Black body, which has long served as a framework through which to ascribe evil to the world. But what prevents me speaking is what I must speak about. Historically, the white body has sought to understand itself in relation to the Black body, which acts as a mirror, a relief, as contrast. Systematically dehumanized people have a hard time, to say the least, telling the difference between what others project onto them and who they are. Even our language, in which the words dark and black carry negative connotations, performs this projection. How can we speak about freedom if the language we're using isn't free? Does the way that we talk about this problem make a difference in how we try to solve it? Does the question, as I phrased it, fail to adequately exhaust the possibilities? It can be easy for Black people to believe about themselves and each other, the fabrications of white culture, which has always sought to disown its basic humanity, sensuality, creatureliness, and sexuality. As a result, many of us are always and already performing in the direction of liberation, performing the mundane. By referencing performance, however, I don't mean to suggest there's a difference between performance and reality. Instead, I'm trying to introduce the absurdity back into a system, white culture, that has come to seem to many normal. Art movements such as Afrofuturism are defined by that re-queering of so-called reality. I want to suggest performance as lived reality, the site of performance being located neither inside nor outside, but at a threshold, at the stage of one's skin. The violence and brutality of white culture is a function of the extent to which it passes unnoticed, under the radar of our senses, making constant recourse to objectivity and the supposed lack of bodily presence, softness, tenderness, and of feeling mind. By pointing to the performances of marginalized people, I'm not implying that there is some unperforming or unparticipating audience. It is, in fact, the presence of a performing and projecting audience that creates the occasion for all other performances. It is to say, I perform my death for you because you have demanded my death. You have exploited my work, and my work has become that exploit. This process will kill me, and you will celebrate my death. You will celebrate what my death has done for you without knowing you are celebrating. And I'll just read one poem. Most of Blackspace is essays, but there's a small collection of poems that I wrote in response to the works of Black video artists, and I've been thinking a lot about ekphrasis as a form of love, and I'm teaching a class right now at St. Joseph's College called ekphrasis as a kind of love. I'll ask you this later, Joshua, but anyway, desire and the gaze, I feel like that came a lot in your poems. So this poem is in response to a feature-length experimental film by the filmmaker Kevin Jerome Everson about a community of Black drag racers, I believe in rural Virginia or rural Ohio, called Cinnamon. Kevin Jerome Everson, Cinnamon, 2006, 1 hour, 10 minutes. Moves a woman in a field, her back to man, working the car, who calls out to Aaron, moves slowly. What flavor you want, the alcohol. At a race there are drag cars and normal cars. There are flowers, blueness of car, and man's shirt, the garage window, and also in the grass and trees, air dynamics. Cooler air means cars run quicker. Aaron in blue taking off. Another man, how he used to do his racing on the street from 1978 to 82. You don't have to have the best car, luck of the draw, God's will, hands, feet inside the car, about to race. Once she starts, sound fade. She's exiting, gives a piece to John outside, a story about after his delay box broke, after Larry beat him, respected him. John is trying to fix the car as Aaron watches. She says, won't make it. John says, no, says it was stupid at first, but ultimately thrilling. 23 minutes, 10 seconds, the car picks up and drives. It isn't dead. The rurality of the surround, Ashley, with cornrows, says, I love you. No talking, in drag. When she was 7, her dad got her a car. Feels lucky. She has 20 trophies in her room. She's sitting on the bed, black and white and silent, getting settled inside John and his influence. Is John Ashley's father? Aaron in a parked car, zoning out. Aaron works at a bank and John is a mechanic, and at work Aaron has her dreads pulled into a bun, whereas on the track, in a lot, in some kind of forest clearing, her hair is down. The saturation is different. A black people in bleachers. A young boy prepares to race. A family unloads groceries from car into house with American flag. That's what drag racing is. Its consistency, the same shot. 4 to 5 young white boys by the fence as Aaron is about to begin. We are inside a car, looking out the windshield, and the closest we get.
Awesome. Thanks, Anne, for reading that. And we have some time for a Q&A. It's like super formal. But I just wanted to ask, so I'll ask Anne a question, and then you guys everyone could jump in, or I don't know. Yeah. Anyways, I'm just like frazzled. I mean, the revolution's happening. Things are happening. It's Friday night, you know. I just am glad that we could all be here. And I just, one thing I appreciate about An's work is how it takes seriously violence, and it always, when I was reading the your chapbook, it was just so amazing to see like questions of Blackness being engaged in a way that was, I thought, it was just for me very riveting and eye-opening. And it's just one thing I always see in your work is that we can take our pain seriously, and we can learn from, we can use our bodies and then deciding when we engage conflict to like as a way of empowerment. So how has your perspective and your project changed, you know, and your practice changed from your chapbook to, you know, your book of essays? Like, how has your writing life been? Like, how has it changed and all that?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for sharing your book with me and wanting to do this reading. And it's always nice to kind of like, well, we haven't met in person yet, but to continue to connect with people over the work. And I think especially queer poets of color can't have too big of a community. So appreciate you. Yeah, I think, you know, you were saying before the reading started that talking about conflict and like moving towards conflict. And I think that Blackspace was, for me, a lot about confronting what were blockages in my writing practice at that time. I mean, it started 6 years ago, and the idea of having an argument, trying to make an argument, even honestly, like just writing prose was like a huge deal, you know? And felt really vulnerable, and still feels like pretty hard. Like it's not my home place or whatever, you know. But a lot of the work came from like moving towards things that felt dangerous, or yeah, like they could potentially hurt. Yeah. I was gonna ask, this relates to a question I was gonna ask you about desire, because I feel like so many of your poems contend with desire, and in particular queer desire, and I think there's a link between desire for other people and the desire to write or create. Just as there's, I think sometimes like we can be attracted to violence or attracted to conflict or have conflicting attraction, you know, attractions to people who we like love, hate, or whatever. And so I'm curious what your thoughts are on desire as it relates to your creative practice.
Yeah, well, first I want to say is Han's book is so beautiful. It's so amazing. And so everyone should get it. You know, and it's really hard as like poets to write sentences and to write essays. Like it's just like it's just like it's also it's somewhat repulsive, because it's like, yo, like we wanted to write poetry. Like that's why we wanted to write poetry. But I think it's just like, I think it is like what you were saying too, like a certain maturity and a certain like positionality in the world that's like, oh yeah, maybe it's not as bad now. Like, yeah, when I was younger I couldn't do this, and then now I can. And I just appreciate so much how like the different nodes or the different kind of priorities of the book shift as like kind of like it's like a failure in circuitry. It's like we can't use race, or just talking about race is not going to get us to the place that we want to be. But not talking about it on the national stage is not going to get there either, you know? So it's just like there's these failures and collapses built into the system. And I like how you use you're different. You juggle different nodes, and you pick up what's important to you and you put it down as necessary, as a poet would. Desire, geez, I think that like the best way I could talk about it is my writing practice. It's just like it was hard for me to be a poet and I started out as a journalist and was always like a rookie journalist, but I was sometimes the only journalist that would go cover a Ferguson protest, or the only journalist of color at a protest, and other journalists would say, why are you talking to the protesters? They don't want to talk to you. I'm like, they're coming from other cities to march in the streets. They want to talk to a journalist. Yeah. And I think, so it's just like that disappointment with prose was just so real. And I think it's just like trying to connect with other queer people and understanding that was going to be dangerous sometimes, or that was going to be hurtful, or, you know, it's like, or it's just going to be temporary, you know, and it's like, you know, we can say what we want about desire, but at the end of the night or at night, you know, desire changes. And I think that's like the difference I see between prose and poetry, you know, it's just like that kind of real duality. And I think it's just like, I just trying to be in those spaces, or do what I can to be in those spaces, or to make those connections was really cool. Like I wrote this book. I would take like a bus ride from Berkeley to San Francisco in Northern California, across the bay 4 times a week. I would stop at cafes and write. And then when it was time, the clubs open, I would go clubbing. And so it was kind of this interlude. So I think about desire like that. And I think that space of interlude, you know, moving between worlds, or, you know, is was really interesting for me, and how I think about desire. Like there's no hard, fast rules, you know, for it.
So also, if someone who's not me or Joshua wants to say something, please just say it. I don't know if there's things that are in the chat or whatever. But what was I going to say? There was before you read a poem, you said that it was the only poem that took place in the present. Did I hear that right? Mm-hmm. And so does that mean it's like the other poems? I heard some that felt like memories, or that were structured like memories, and there seemed to be an amount of like fantasy as well, which I think fantasy in particular has always been hard for me, because it feels sort of like naughty. And this is why I like admire the fiction writers of the world, because I like can't even begin. But I wonder if you could speak to what the difference is for you of writing in the present versus writing memory or fantasy.
Yeah, I think the challenges of writing in the present, I think it's like you have to address everyone around you. Like you have to speak to people and engage with people. And when I was coming out, that was like the last thing I wanted to do. You know, like I heard enough of everyone around me, like at a certain point. Like you know, it's annoying. Like it's really annoying. Like constantly being like the best friend or the colleague or the coworker or the student and never having enough. But there were 2 queer people who made a fundamental difference in my life. And as a student, before I started, you know, as I was starting to party and go to San Francisco, one was Marlon Riggs, the filmmaker. Wow. One not even alive. And he was a professor at a school I went to, but the only acknowledgement, his memory lived on in a scholarship that was being up, and a name I saw on the poster. you know, he never was brought up in my classes. And so I felt like this huge betrayal. And because it's just like, oh my God, you mean I go through life and my sexuality is like is not even acknowledged? And I don't know. So I think, writing about the present was horrible. It was like the last thing I wanted to do. But then, of course, you know, marriage passed for gay people. You know, like there's more happening. There's more support to be trans. My niece is trans, you know, like, and can come out, you know, and so I think it's important to just acknowledge the present too, you know, like, and so I think that was like the defining moment of being like, yeah, it was not great, but there's so much more fucked up stuff happening in the world, you know, so, you know, I think I could, so that's when I decided to write about present.
Should we stop?
I feel like it's 4 o'clock, and I'm going to reach out to, all right, it's 4 o'clock in California, and it's in New York, it's 7 o'clock. Yep. There's a revolution happening. I feel like we could stop. I want to talk about your book and stuff, but like, I feel like I want to read it too, and I want to write about it. So, and I just hope this is the first of more conversations. How do you feel?
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah, I feel similarly. There's a whole revolution. My friend told me that the stores in Wisconsin have run out of ammunition. They're like sold out of ammunition. So, yay, Jendi. Just gonna drop that off and say that, yeah, I would love to connect with you in the future. And thanks to everyone for watching, and don't be alone, and
yes,
yeah, just don't be alone.
Yeah. Thank you both so much, An and Josh. Did anyone else want to chime in, have a question or anything before we say goodnight and take a look back at the ongoing revolution?
Thank you for saving me from scrolling Twitter for an hour.
Yeah, exactly. So good to have a break.
I love having this virtual community, not being close to New York anymore. I really miss the center, and it's great. One of the few things that's come out of this horrible year is being able to have you right here in my office.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. That is a good thing, I mean, I can't imagine going through all of this without the internet. So as much as we may complain about it and the shortcomings of the technology, it's a lifesaver. So thank you all so much for joining tonight. Thank you, An. Thank you, Josh, for reaching out and getting the ball rolling so that we could have this event. Yes, so I linked to both books on SPD's website in the chat function. And hopefully, eventually we will get your books at the Bureau. But for now, yeah, you can get them through SPD is the easiest way. I hope everyone has a lovely night. I'm gonna post the video of this on our YouTube channel, so folks can check it out after if they were unable to join. All right, my dears.
Bye.
Send queer love to all of you. Good night.